On 702. 702.
News and current affairs.
Xolani Fihla is spokesperson for the Johannesburg Metro Police Department. He joins me now. Xolani, thank you so much once again for talking to us. Always great talking to you. So it appears that in this morning's blockade, taxi blockade in Soweto, there was a tragic incident that involved a JMPD vehicle which collided with some pedestrians. Please give us the background and the details thereof.
To you, Aubrey, and let me take the opportunity to greet the listeners. This morning at approximately 10 past 6, our officers were responding to reports of road blockages. It's in Mfulo Central in Soweto. This is due to the ongoing route dispute between the two associations which use that route, which is Machaba Drive, which is near Elisum-Toledo Road. And during the response, our vehicle unfortunately was involved in a collision with another vehicle. The matter is being investigated, but unfortunately the collision then resulted in our vehicle being colliding with 3 pedestrians who were standing on the side of the road. And in total, there were 7 people who were involved in the accident scene, and it was 2 JMPD officers in their vehicle and 2 other occupants in the other vehicle, and those 3 pedestrians. And unfortunately, 2 pedestrians then lost their lives. Was one male at the scene, was declared deceased at the scene, and unfortunately, the female pedestrian was declared deceased upon arrival at the hospital.
I know that the investigation is still ongoing, and more details will obviously surface as the investigation continues. But do we have any idea as to what were the circumstances that led to the collision?
The circumstances is, as I explained earlier, that officers were then responding to this road blockage by taxi operators, and it is alleged that the other vehicle failed to stop at the stop sign, and with the officers then responding with the blue lights and sirens, the vehicles then collided, and it then turned into a second collision with the pedestrians. And it is definitely unfortunate, and as the JMPD, we do send our deepest condolences to both those pedestrians' families, and we hope the matter will be investigated as soon as possible. Our officers from the accident unit did open a case for culpable homicide at Morocco-Nesfield, the SAPS, and the SAPS will then investigate the matter.
The bigger story here is, of course, the blockade, and we are seeing more and more of these blockades or anything similar. We've heard of many different parts in the country, Eastern Cape, now in Cape Town. We're hearing all sorts of issues around skirmishes, fights, antagonisms between taxi operators, the law, taxi operators with other taxi operators. In this particular case, what was the issue that created this blockade?
The issue is an ongoing route dispute between the 2 taxi associations, Nandua and Wata. And it has been ongoing for a couple of years now. I know in the 4 or 3 years ago, the route had to be totally stopped, and there was no operations from both associations, and that was terrible for the commuters. I know it was terrible for also the operators as well, because it's a loss of revenue, but it was due to people dying and people being injured and the routes being blocked off to traffic, and it did cause major disruptions. What I do understand is that there was a court order that was issued last year regarding the same particular route and the 2 associations. And what I further understand is that from the court order, it did say that both associations can use the route, but it does seem that someone is still disgruntled about that, and this resulted to the blockages, not only in Mfulo Central, but also in Orlando West on Klipspruit Valley Road and Kumalo Road, is near Vilagazi Street. And from that incident, fortunately, there were no injuries or violence that was reported. But we did get further reports as well, not too far from Mfulo Central and Mfulo South, that taxis were vandalized and stripped as well.
There's an ever-growing sense of of entitlement by operators, and I imagine it's not everybody, but this story is one that is on everybody's mind at the moment, where we hear of various operators suggesting that they own certain routes. Not too long ago, we heard of the death of two drivers, rear via drivers in Soweto, because or allegedly because certain taxi operators feel that they are encroaching on their routes. Not too long ago, we saw the burning of buses on the Moloto road and other parts of Mpumalanga, because it suggested that there is a feeling that taxi operators own that route. We've heard so many times of people being kicked out of private cars because taxi operators believe that those people should be in a taxi. In fact, we even had a situation just late last year where a particular taxi association put it out there that if they find people being given a lift by a private citizen, then that private citizen would understand that this is not allowed as far as they're concerned. And it appears that the taxi industry has become a law unto itself. What are your directives as the JMPD as far as this is concerned? We're seeing what's happening in Cape Town. We're seeing what's happening in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. But it appears that there is a growing levels of entitlement by the taxi industry in as far as routes and ownership of that space. What is your directive from authorities for the JMPD as far as this is concerned?
From the JMPD's perspective, and especially when it comes to taxi violence related matters, we then play a supporting role to other law enforcement agencies like the South African Police Services. But then these initiatives are then handled on a higher level by the Gauteng Roads and Transport Department, who are the department who is responsible for the allocations of routes and registering of routes as well within Gauteng and in the city of Johannesburg, but also working with the Department of Transport in the city of Johannesburg as well, community safety and the Gauteng Traffic Police. So it is an all-encompassing role when it comes to law enforcement when it has to deal with taxi violence. But as you did mention, that there's other separate incidences that happen as well with Uber drivers as well, with the private owners' vehicles being confiscated by these taxi operators and saying that they have to pay a certain fee because they were then carrying people on their routes. So it is becoming a serious problem. But as the JMPD, and especially with these individual incidences that happen, when we do get a word of it, we attend to it. I do know that last week we had something similar where a person's vehicle was almost confiscated by taxi operators within the city of Johannesburg, and fortunately our officers intervened and made sure that it doesn't happen. But it does need a greater eye on it because at the end of the day, it leads to violence where people lose their lives, breadwinners are lost, and it does become a great problem. So a greater eye needs to be put on to make sure that this is curbed, because at the end of the day, we do need collaboration. Even if the taxi associations can say that it's their routes, but it is a public road at the end of the day, and it's meant to be used by the public.
What is your advice to the public? If I'm driving around my car and I'm in a lift club, for example, and I get stopped by taxi operators who then tell me that they're going to I nearly said expropriate. If they tell me that they're going to confiscate my car, without compensation, what should I say? What should I do?
From a law enforcement perspective, it's always a report as soon as possible. But we have to also say this like we do when people are faced with criminal instances, that always be on the lookout and aware and vigilant of your surroundings. but it becomes very difficult because taxis travel on the same route as you do, and you'd never know that a person would stop you and then say that you're using their route and I'm going to take your car. But most importantly, from a law enforcement perspective, please report as soon as possible to the JMPD or the SAPS or other law enforcement agencies so we can attend to it as soon as possible and make sure that the people who are doing these wrong deeds are brought to book.
How do you characterize that wrong deed? What is it? It's
intimidation. And also, if they're going to say that you need to pay to get your vehicle back, it also is a borderline of extortion as well. So those are criminal charges.
And the taking of the car?
Taking of the car as well, because as you said, it's an expropriation without your permission.
So it's theft?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is. Yeah.
All right. A number of questions from some listeners. Brapet says, Orbs, can you ask Mr. Fihla, now that Nanduwewe, I don't know what that is, has acknowledged being... okay. Has acknowledged being responsible for the blockade. This is, of course, against the court order. Are the organizers going to be arrested? If not, why not?
As I said earlier, that as a JMPD, we play a supporting role, and those type of information is on a higher level. So I think the Department of Roads and Transport in Gauteng will then give us a further directive on what needs to be done regarding these blockages for today.
And then John in Craighall says, Aubrey, what is the basis in law that causes taxi operators to believe they can reserve any route for their exclusive servicing?
In law, as I did say, that the routes are regulated and registered through the various departments, and in Gauteng it's the Department of Roads and Transport. So it regulates that taxis should be using these certain routes and where they should stop, where they should pick up. But at the end of the day, those routes are on a public road, and if you are using your public vehicle or other public transport modes, then you should be doing so freely. I know that the operators of those vehicles, you as a private driver, you pay your license disc, and you should be able to access all the public roads that we do have in the city, and it shouldn't be a case where then people are intimidated for using the roads which are open for the public.
Xolani, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it. I really hope that at some point responsible taxi operators and taxi associations will be able to sit together with the authorities and find a way of dealing with these issues in a way that doesn't put the public in danger and that doesn't exacerbate the criminal conditions that we're becoming more and more accustomed to, which is a great tragedy as far as I'm concerned. But thank you very much for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, and have a great evening further.
Xolani Fihla is spokesperson for the JMPD.